Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 240. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. He's the master of disaster, the king of sting. Week after week he does that podcast thing, so says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know. On this episode, we are joined by artist extraordinaire Jim Calafiore from Secret Six, and I'm really excited to have him on the show. We had a really cool interview with him. I'm releasing this as its own piece. I'm actually in the middle of report cards at work right now, plus it's my birthday weekend, so I'm really anxious to get you guys an episode. We have two interviews coming up for you. We have this episode, then I'm going to come back a little bit sooner with one from Freddie E. Williams II, where we talk about JSA All-Stars. So we've got two interviews back-to-back this week. This piece, when I was done with it, I was going to go on and edit the Freddie E. Williams II interview, but that was going to take me another couple days to finish that up, and I'm like, well, let me get you this content out now, because this speaks for itself, this episode, and as does the Freddie E. Williams II one. So we got two great shows coming up for you with interviews. So I want to thank, once again, Jim Calafiore for joining us on this one, and hopefully you'll enjoy this one. We have a great discussion about his work on Secret Six, his work on Aquaman. We talk a little bit Gotham Underground. We also talk some of his work outside of DC. We have a cool little Doctor Who tangent and sports tangent, which when I was going through and editing the episode, I'm like, well, should I take those out because they're not really comic discussions? But I'm like, no, what's cool about that is you get to see a lot of Jim's personality and get to know him, which is something I think we as fans always like to get to know our creators and things like that, and when you hear it, I think it's really a great chance to get to know a creator. And I encourage you to check out his website, jimcalafiore.com. He talks a little bit in the episode about some great things that are coming up for it. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Over at DCBService.com, our show sponsor, you can pick up Secret Six number 31, written by Gail Simone with art by Jim Calafiore, and a cover by Daniel, it's Luvisi. And this is part one of the three-part Darkest House. The story readers have been demanding. A member of the Secret Six attempts to bring back a fallen loved one by using the demonic Get Out of Hell free card, stolen back in the first arc of the series. And as it turns out, Hell wants the card back. Regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. Over at InStockTrades.com, you can pick up Secret Six Danse Macabre, the trade paperback. Amanda Waller and her Suicide Squad have captured Deadshot to force him back into their ranks in this volume collecting Secret Six number 15 to 18, which is actually the kickoff of Jim Calafiore on Secret Six, and the Suicide Squad special number 67. But his teammates in the Six don't see that happening anytime soon. And that's a Blackest Night tie-in as well. It's regularly $14.99, 38% off, only $9.29. So it's a great chance to pick up the work of Jim Calafiore. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I just want to give a quick little disclaimer on this episode. Normally our episodes are family-friendly. We do have topics from time to time, like we've done Preacher and Vertigo books and things like that, where we get into some mature topics. This is one of those episodes. We're talking about Secret Six, and there's some sequences in there, plus some language on this episode that for the real little ones, you're going to want to double-check before you listen with them. So please enjoy this interview, and we hope you liked it as much as we did. Jim Calafiore was a fantastic guest.
To the Batmobile. Let's go. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed. You're ready to move up.
Joining us for this segment, this is an artist who I've really had a long history with, Jim Calafiore. I was looking through the history with you. First of all, I referenced immediately when I met you your Aquaman run with Peter David, which I loved. But I was looking through at work that you've done at Valiant with Magnus and Exo Manowar and Armorines and Rye. I was a huge Valiant fan. I'm like, oh my gosh, have I read a decent amount of work that you've been associated with that I've really, truly loved, through to Gotham Underground and the Batgirl mini, and I could go on and on. You're on what is easily a show favorite every single issue that comes out. We've probably spent this past year the most time on talking about Secret Six versus any other book. It's just a stellar book, and it's an honor, Jim Calafiore, to have you on the show.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we're getting a lot of nice critical response.
I wanted to do a comment or two about Aquaman, because obviously the majority of our talking we're going to talk about is the Six. It's a work that stands out for me, because I remember when you took over on the series and I got to see some of your issues on it, I started thinking, wow, what an interesting series to do. You guys had to craft like a whole landscape, an underground universe here. What was it like to draw a character who was mainly underwater? Was there any challenges for you as an artist, or did you have to think differently to do that? Because to me, I wanted to visit Atlantis reading that series.
Well, there's a variety of things. I mean, I would see other people who would fill in when I was tired or something, And I remember there was one artist who drew everybody's hair straight up in the air. In essence, thinking they were underwater and their hair would be flowing. He had it all going straight up in the air like they were upside down. So there's flow dynamics to pay attention to a certain degree, not in any sort of crazy way. I didn't constantly worry about which way the hair was going, but you could get it wrong. And there was a lot to do with fish, which was fine with me. I'm a huge reference guy. I have a lot of books. I was always into nature shows to begin with, so I had a lot of reference. So all the fish I did in the book were specifically referenced for their color and their look, unless it was a called-for fish, but a specific fish that was called for. You had to pay attention to things like that. There was one issue that I didn't do where I think the writer called for Aquaman to spear a shrimp as it swam by and eat it, and the artist drew cleaned headless shrimp, because that's all he knew from the food store. So production had to draw on little heads and little antennae. But other than that, it was just easy sometimes. If the deadline got really crazy, it would be just blue in the back behind him. I didn't have to draw anything. We were in the water. So it was a little bit of a blessing, too, sometimes. I did spend a lot of time on referencing it, and the city was a fun thing to draw. Just a complete mishmash of architectural styles and just doing whatever we wanted, really. Just having fun with it.
Was it a little freeing to be able to, because you're dealing with a place that's really, you don't have outside reference. I'm talking about with the buildings and architecture. Because one of the things that I really loved about it, and it was something, actually referencing a lot of your future work at Valiant, we were doing Magnus and Rye and stuff like that. I really like when we see these different type of locations that you don't normally see, and artists get to have fun with the architecture and kind of crafting it and pulling you into a brand new world. I really did want to visit it, and I thought it was great. So was that freeing for you?
No, it wasn't. I mean, if my stuff, how just detail-oriented I am and how I just plaster things, it was as much work as anything else. In other words, it was as much work to do in New York City as it was to do that. It was just a different mindset for it. I mean, I actually used there's a Frank Lloyd Wright building in Poseidonus, I actually used a lot of reference for the specifics, the bric-a-brac and whatnot, the decorations on the buildings. It wasn't any more freeing than anything else. I find it all fun to do. That's why I love big city shot.
Now, do you kind of have like a preference though? Would you look more towards like a supernatural kind of deal, or maybe that more entrenched into reality type of artwork? You say, for example, you got your Aquaman series that you did, and you got your Secret Six that has more like your Dead Shots, your Catman, these regular type of people who are in this universe, or you got kind of like your meta style type of Aquaman, and even within Six, you have a couple metas. Do you look at, saying, oh, this is kind of a neat type of deal, or is this more your cup of tea, or is it kind of like just the diversity of it all, a draw for you?
Honestly, I see it all as the same. It's just the challenge of drawing characters. It's a challenge of drawing whatever's called for. Sometimes I, click to a character more than another, but in terms of the actual drawing, it's all just a challenge. It's all the same challenge for me. The only time is really that I have to really do references when we're in a specific place that's called for. But in terms of just even the looks of the characters, it's really all just the same to me. It's just drawing, honestly.
One of the questions I have, the Western issue number 24 of Secret Six.
Right.
One of my favorite issues this year, just because I didn't see it coming. And I remember opening up the first page, and I'm like, what the? And then I was paging through it, and I got so engrossed and drawn into the story. As an artist, when did you find out that you were going to be doing this issue? And what was your reaction when you saw it? Because it was great. I loved what you guys did. So this is totally complimentary, but that's what I loved about it, because Six can do that and get away with it.
Not sure. I don't know if it was when I got the script or she had mentioned something about it beforehand, but I didn't know they're not doing Elseworlds anymore at DC, but the Elseworlds nature to it. But once I was actually sort of confused by everybody being so confused by it. We just come off a very heavy storyline, Catman going completely apeshit, and you needed a palate cleanser. You know what I mean? So I thought it was a perfect idea to take a break and just do something that had no effect on anything and was just sort of a lark. I think Gail actually has some plans to do something with it again. I'm not sure what. But the only problem there was I hate drawing horses. So I was really worried about drawing the horses.
It all came out great because I loved the atmosphere and the tone and the whole setting. I was a fan of the series Starman, and they did Times Past. And I like issues like that. And there was annuals over the years where there's annuals that have taken place out of continuity. So I dig that kind of stuff immediately. When I got a few pages in and I realized what you guys were doing, I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah. It was also a challenge. I mean, it's definitely out of my comfort zone. I've never done Westerns before. So
see, I would never guess that you would even think that's out of your comfort zone, because for me, I'm reading this, I was like, this was a really cool, because I'm a Western fan. I really like the genre and the various, kind of elements that we've seen with the Western, and reading
I did
this,
okay.
Oh God, yeah, this was very just a comfort reading it, because it had a little bit different kind of coloring sometimes, had a little bit.
That was Jason Wright.
Oh,
did a beautiful job on the colors. He brought his palette just all down to earth tone.
And your attention to detail that you go into, like I really like it when you get into like the facial expressions and you're telling a story just on the art style alone, that it really just fits so well into this. And you guys just have this great creative team going on with Class A writing on it. That's why we really gush about the Six. It's not just the story, it's visual pleasing, and it's just this great meshing coming together.
Well, you can gush away. I won't stop you.
All right. Well, hey, believe me, we can gush for hours on end on Secret Six without even batting an eye, because there's just so much, that we get from it. And it's one of the things that I love seeing is you're going from, some drama moments, some of these, as I said, really cool close-ups of the faces where you see just the emotion going on. Then you got these great combat action sequences fighting going on at the same time. Now, when you're looking at that, do you have drawing, is there one that you're more favoring to? Do you like the emotional side? Do you like the action drawing? Or how does that go with you?
It's kind of weird. I mean, I love doing the big shots. You love doing big action shots. But sometimes I just get satisfaction sitting here making the conversation pages interesting, or at least interesting for me. That's always a challenge, because it is just talking heads. So I try and I get satisfaction out of something when that really works, and I think that the flow works on that. And, I mean, even technically, that's the flow working on that most of the time is the reader doesn't notice it and shouldn't notice it. And that's the whole point of it working if you get into a boring, it's in essence boring talking heads. The reader shouldn't notice it's talking heads.
One of the things that I'm going to go and commend the work that both you and Gail are doing, and Jason Wright, on those sequences in particular. Some of those are some of my favorite in many of the issues, because one of the things that I really enjoy, we're getting to know the characters. And it's not just talking heads, it's a lot of emotion delivered there. Because the Six are very diverse characters. Yeah, they're all villains, and they've all got a little bit and a lot of bit crazy, depending on which one we're talking about.
Right.
But in those moments, and it's something that, going back to your Aquaman work, for example, straight on through, I love when I get to see your work on characters where we see their personalities come out in facial expressions. And then there's a certain consistency in a way that a character has a certain swagger, if that makes sense. And it's something I want to commend you on. How do you get to know your characters? To do that so consistently? Well,
I do work on, or hopefully work on getting the facial expressions right. I mean, I'm not a Chuck Jones, Warner Brothers kind of guy where the expressions are over the top, where you get that in some artists, which looks great, but it's just not my style. I try and concentrate on getting it right, getting the emotion across. In terms of a character, you just hope you have a feel for it. You know what I mean? The dialogue is helping, it's what they're saying, but it's also, you hope you're reading the character correctly, like Deadshot, my first issue on issue 15, which was all Deadshot, especially the opening scene with him in the diner. Tried to give him, not pompous, but a dismissive air to his postures. I mean, acting isn't just facial expression. It's all the body position. I tried there to just give him this sort of fuck it all sort of posture to his body and his face. Or something like the Skartaris story arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With Tremor, that character we introduced.
Yes, yeah.
Most of the time, if you notice, most of the time her head is tilted slightly back, her eyes are closed, and it's tilted slightly to the side just because she's an arrogant bitch. I've just got her head and whenever I didn't have to have her actually looking somewhere, I would just put her head slightly back, tilted to the right, nose in the air.
I tell you, some of those Skartaris scenes was just breathtaking, just beauty of that. Especially that first scene when they're first in there was that nice 2-page spread and just
from 25.
Yeah, from 25. That those kind of stuff.
The first shot of the valley. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was that great detail of everything just going into that. Right then, you knew there was going to be something special coming into going out of this whole story arc.
It's one of the important things about, in essence, backgrounds, is really establishing your backgrounds, establishing your place. It sets it firmly, and when you really put the effort into X number of shots, it lets you cheat on other panels, where you've really you spend a lot of time establishing it that well in the mind of the person. You don't have to draw it that well every time. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's, I guess, a little trick.
Well, it's something you guys have to do because you're trying to stay within a certain deadline to get those pages in.
It's 22 pages a month. So, but yeah, that was also. I mean, that shot was very important just because it was the valley. It was establishing it for the reader, and it was the grandeur of this strange world.
Has there ever been anything when you've gotten a 6 script? Because one of the things I really enjoy about the book is it's like we're into 28 issues now. I'm constantly shocked by where this book will go. Do you get scripts where you're just kind of like, I'm doing what now? We're going where?
No, I'm expecting it from Gail. I was like, I was sort of like that on The Warlord. It was like, why are we going here? But there was sort of a synchronicity of plot. We just come off of Catman going fairly insane and bestial, and he was still on the edge of that, dealing with that, and we were taking them the whole team, but him specifically somewhere bestial, and that's why he kind of loses it there a little bit in the storyline.
Yeah, those Catman, the Cats in the Cradle story arc, that had some of my favorite moments in 6. Even the torture sequences that he was doing. It's sick to say this, but those things were absolutely beautiful. Just, meshing again of those great action sequences to those great emotional, just that rage and determination in his face, and the one knife guy when he's torturing him, and even just that final bit where he's like, hey, you can touch my cape, come on. Oh, your hands are nailed to the wall so you can't do it. It was just, again, action sequences flowing with that raw emotion coming out that I just really just pulled me into the whole story arc. Impressed when I see teams like that. Now, do you guys actually, when you're in the creative process, or is there open discussion? Hey, try this. What about that kind of stuff? Or how is your internal dynamics?
Gail, I mean, I've been working 20 years now. I seem to have built a certain amount of trust with writers that they know I know what I'm doing. So she's fairly open to changes. If I have any changes to make sort of pacing of the way the story paces out, I'll add panels or change an angle or something like that. But other than that, I have always been sort of an artist that just sort of, if I have questions, I'll send them. But once I'm rolling, I just roll. Hopefully she likes what I'm doing, which she seems to do.
One of the things that I really like is some of the times, like especially that Catman arc, which was really a psychological, really, you're seeing this man become very, very tormented and go down a path that it's obvious other members of the 6 had already been down, especially Deadshot. Like, Deadshot's recognizing, I've been there before, and he doesn't want to see this guy go down there. And I loved those moments. I loved not just what you guys showed, but what you didn't show. Like how you'd go from a certain panel, like where he's ready to start torturing this guy, and then it would say in issue like 20, it would say 3 hours later, and he was in the second that you were referencing, Jim, where he was like nailed up on the boards there. I'm like, whoa! And a lot of times being left that to your imagination because of you talked about establishment shots for the backgrounds before, but also we've already seen what Catman's been doing established. So now at this point, where could he possibly have taken it during those 3 hours?
There's not a lot we left to the imagination in that storyline.
Yeah.
It was a brutal storyline. And it was more brutal than Gale actually called for. Right in the script. Easy on the blood here. And I'm like, no. We're going all out.
Nice.
And I just said I would ask the editor, anybody complain? He goes, no. I go, okay.
Really loved that sequence. And then you're right. Then you go from that to the Western issue. And it was funny to go from that and then you go to, and that's one of the things I like about 6, the Skartera storyline, we're dealing with the after effects of what's gone on in that story with Catman, where, you know,
Right.
what is his role in the team and where is he going to be? But now we're in a more of an adventure story to a certain extent, with the 2 teams split up and gradually converging with each other, which you know is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I find that's a pure joy about the work you guys are doing with this book is I'm convinced now that Secret Six can go anywhere and tell any kind of story with the makeup of the characters that are there.
There's the one thing I've always said about the book to people who don't know it, you know, come to me at shows and say, what are you doing now? They're a group of villains, obviously, and they're doing missions, but they haven't been asked to do anything really bad, unless it's the bad people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had to kill an innocent because that's what they were hired to do, something like that. So I'm not sure we can go anywhere. I'd like to see if we try and go there, or what that would bring about. But other than that, yeah, we can pretty much go anywhere.
I think one of the things that I like about the book, you mentioned that them being villains, but we see that even though they're villains do have a twisted code, a twisted morality, and it's different between all 6 members. You'll see that each one has a line, a crossing point, or that thing that is personal to them. It may have been what set them on a path of being a villain to begin with, that thing where it's like, you can't go there. And sometimes the other ones will jump on board, and other times that will be a part where that's a point of contention between them because it's all about business, and they don't want to cross the business line. But I love the diversity of the characters through that, and the way that comes across in the book.
Yeah. Well, strangely enough, I think the most moral character is Deadshot.
Yeah, he actually he's become that for me.
Yeah. I mean, the one character who just is completely nuts and has no morals is, to me, Ragdoll, you know. I didn't know who the character was before I did him. He's the amoral one on the team, definitely.
Is there one of those characters that you particularly find yourself like, I really enjoy drawing this character, or is it just you enjoy drawing the group, or how does that work for you as an artist? Do you have characters that you become particularly attached to in a series?
Usually, but this is actually the question I dread at shows because everybody goes, who's your favorite character on Secret Six? I don't have one. I don't dislike anybody, but I just have not got a character yet there that's like, I love drawing this character. I like drawing them all at different times. Depends on the scene, or, you know, I'm really enjoying, you know, Bane with all the veins sticking out of his neck when he's pissed at something, or you know, or a nice sexy shot of Jeanette, or something like that. But there's just not been that moment where it's like, this is the character I really like. I just haven't had that with the book, which is strange, but... That
could probably be a good thing, just in the sense that it seems like there's moments where I'm really just enjoying everybody when it kind of fits the sequence that I'm doing at that time.
Yeah, that's basically it. And for some strange reason, everybody loves how I'm drawing Killer Shark.
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay? Because basically he's been a really bad character. They're like, wow, you make him look really cool finally. I'm like, okay.
I actually really enjoyed his sequences with Ragdoll.
Yeah.
The way those visually played off each other, because it's funny how this book can go to some very comedic moments and then shift to the very dark, like right away, or grim or solemn.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, that's Gale's writing. I mean, mixing the humor in with the grit, for sure.
Well, throughout that Skartera, the ending sequence, you really showed the horror of war, especially when Alice is running around trying to get weaponry, you know, for Deadshot, and you just kind of see the look on her face as she's, you know, seeing this, and then the background, how, you know, the fight sequence is going on. That's just a great, just... You know, it's that again is one of those complex emotional action sequences meshed together to really just draw an emotional response.
Well, it's not a book that pulls punches, for sure. And at the same time, it's also not a book for kids. When I give copies to friends, I go, don't give them to your kids.
With comics, I love a diverse comic reading library. I love some all-age, I love your Tiny Titans and those type of books like that. I love Billy Batson of the Magic Shazam. I thought that was an awesome book. But then I hear yourself that this book is, and this is easily, and I'm really not just saying this to get on the show. We've got like a history of talking about this book intensely on the show. Secret Six is easily in my top 2, and it's really that and Birds, because I love Gail's writing so much. But it really is the artwork and everything that you guys are doing on this book. I can't talk about it enough on the show, because I think it's a book that everybody who's, like you said, a mature comic fan should be reading, because it's so different, it's so unique, it's very contained in the sense that you don't need to be reading 20 gazillion different books. It'll echo what's going on in the universe.
Right. Yeah.
But it's got its own flavor to it, and it's funny. To a certain extent, it reminds me of back in the day when you were on Aquaman. Aquaman fit that kind of bill for me, because it was its own kind of piece that was going on over there, and I really, really enjoyed that book for the same way.
Right, and it was dark, and it was a darker book too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely a darker Aquaman that Peter took him on. I mean, that's the sort of thing nobody understood about it sometimes. Jeez, who took it over after Peter? And Larson.
Yes.
Larson took it over and immediately got rid of the hook on his hand, and it's just that was something people didn't understand. That it's the DC universe. He could go to Star Labs anytime he wanted to and got a hand. The hook was sort of a self-imposed handicap on himself. He did that to him. He chose to have that. Well, I mean, he didn't choose to lose his hand, but once he lost his hand, he chose to have that handicap of not having a hand there. It said something about the character. So, I mean, that was one of the things I liked about Peter's Aquaman.
Plus, the hook did look cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was also, if he got swung around on the wire one more time, I was going to rip my hair out. It was like, every time he would shoot it out, somebody'd grab it and pull it. And I'm like, oh, man, stop doing that. I actually had plotted out a filler issue with the colorist of the time, and we were pitching it, and we I don't know why it didn't get done. The editor at the time liked it, but as we were working out the plot line, he said, and then, he sent some pages with the fight scene, and he shoots out the hook, and the guy grabs the hook and swings him around by it. I said, the only way I'll agree to this is if he says, I have to stop doing this. And he said, okay. Unfortunately, never saw print.
Oh, man.
There's a sequence in issue 28 of Secret Six that I'd like to commend you on, too, that I really, really enjoyed. The Dear Diary sequence at the beginning. Because when I saw that, I opened it up, because we'd been going through this whole Scarteris bit, and then all of a sudden I open this up, and we get this great Black Alice piece, where we see her as a child. And it was, when Jim mentioned the battlefield before, one of the things that I really enjoyed about the battlefield sequence was, before we got to see her and actually see the battlefield again, we got to see, like, her childhood, her motivations, what made her who she is. One of her scars. All these characters have them, and it's one of the things that I really enjoy about the books. It's why it's a lot of times I feel very dirty saying how much I connect with these characters from time to time.
Therapy, definitely.
Yeah. Her eyes shut, though, when she's clutching Dad. I think every kid, we've all been there at some point. There's been that moment in our life where we're just kind of clutching onto our family or something like that. And to see this moment, there's somebody that we've had that moment with. And then to see her pulled into this sequence where all hell's breaking loose all around her. It was just such a great shift.
But she still looks like a kid there.
Yes.
That's the point. Well, she is a kid. I mean, I'm not sure of the age. She's a kid, and sometimes that has to be the face of a kid. If you look, you'll see differences in how her face presents. I mean, later in, not that issue, earlier in the arc, when she's talking about, we can't let this happen here, it was about, really about imperialism and conquering people and their lands. She says, we can't have here. She has it still looks like her, but she has this very determined, more adult expression on her face because she's having a very adult moment. But then when she's a kid, she's got to be a kid. She can't be drawn like, whatever babe character you can think of. She's got to have that face that we remember she's just a kid. I did a close-up of her somewhere. I can't remember. In the Catman arc, when Catman was going crazy. And she said that she has a line after she had attacked Scandal. And she says, I think I gave my dad cancer, or something to that effect. And I did a big close-up and big doughy eyes with tears, and it was just, that was maybe the first time since she's been in the book, I think, that I made the point of saying, with the face, this is a kid, you got to remember that.
And those moments are really important for me in this book, because it's the moments where you understand, like, these are villains, they're essentially mercenaries in the sense that previously they've been very used to maybe working alone or shifting from team to team or group to group based on necessity for the situation, but never really having lengthy long-term connections with people. And in these moments you see how, yeah, they're all a little nuts, and yeah, they're you could say they're all a little deviant, and to various degrees. When you like ragdoll's your obvious extreme, you see how and why these people connect. Like why there's those moments where when the team seems like they're ready to split, they somehow do find their way back to each other. And I think it's because we get to see those moments every so often where, okay, I kind of get it here. I'm like, this is like the glue, these little tiny things where she talks about her dad and that she caused him cancer. It's like, okay, I get why she's acting the way she is. And maybe Scandal's connecting with her own scars with her own dad. I love that the book gets that deep. We're connecting with these characters in ways that go beyond the page.
Gail does a great job of balancing that, balancing the characters and making them work together. I don't know if it's so much picking the right characters. I just think she does a good job of writing them together. I know nobody will ever write Catman as well. He was always sort of a joke character, and after this, he'll go back to being a joke character, I'm sure. I don't think there's certain characters that people can only write. Only one person can write them.
I would agree with that too, because I'll tell you a character that she revitalized. I think she revitalized for this series is Bane. I think Bane is every bit as exciting for me in this as he was in Nightfall when he was first introduced. He's got that same kind of, I understand the strategist that was able to break Batman's back. And there's even that cool sequence in, going back to the Western issue, where you guys relive that with Deathstroke.
Yeah.
and I loved that moment because I think so much in this series it's conveyed to me an understanding of who the man was that was able to do that to Batman. And also his own scars and demons that he's continually facing because he was on Venom and things like that. So I think it's a cool revitalization of that character.
Right. Well, I've never read Nightfall, so I don't know how the character was represented then. I've got to assume that Gail's been expanding him more character-wise, so that I got to imagine he's different than he was then, because she's definitely adding a lot of depth to him.
You're nailing what I think is the core values of him visually as well. The way he carries himself, there's a certain confidence there, yet there's that time where you see the emotion to him with Scandal. I love those moments with Scandal where he's still this big, confident, like, beast of a man that like does these battles, but then yet you see that father figure side. You can see it in his mask. Like the guy's wearing a mask, and I'm like, you get this moment where he's like trying to be so hard to be like a twisted dad.
Yeah, I mean that's all Gail. That's the relationship she's come up with them, which works really well. Visually, I can't draw him as ridiculously oversized as he's been drawn because it wouldn't work. He'd be too big to interact with the characters, so we've cut down his size a bit. Even Nicola Scott did that. There's been some adjusting there of how actually massive he is, because he used to be just Hulk-like in terms of dwarfing other characters. But he's softer without being soft.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And I'll be honest with you, speaking as a fan from the size issue, it's interesting when you were talking about that. Here's how I took it. The guy's not jacked up on Venom anymore. So there'd be a natural reason why he would be a smaller dude than he was before. In the sense that he's certainly very physically strong, and he looks like, if I saw him coming at me as you guys are drawing him now, like, right. Well, this is an intimidating dude. But he's also not jacked up on that Venom and what that did to him all that time. So there's actually a story reason, too, why he would be smaller.
I guess. I didn't even think of it that way. I just thought, I can't have him that big and be able to work with everybody.
Yeah, so I think it works on both levels, which is great.
Yeah. It was funny earlier when we were talking about the big valley scene in Scar Terror, you're like, yeah, you go into detail and you can take it a little bit easier later on, kind of stuff. You're mentioning like kind of cheating, but we're flipping through the issue and we're flipping through the ending, the final issue of the story arc where the machete guy becomes that dragon.
Matisse.
Oh yeah.
Matisse turns into that. It's Demos had taken him over.
Demos turns into that dragon, and just looking at the detail of all the different scales and just the level of depth you go into this dragon snake creature, and I'm laughing going, yeah, and he's saying he took it easier or cheated later on? I don't see it in this one.
Well, the 2-page spread of the battle on the bridge I think Gail had written that I was going to be she was giving me shots to take it easier, and then she saw what I did with it, and it was like, you're supposed to be taking it easier. It's just the way I see things. I've always been very self-abusive that way. I just start, somewhere about a third of the way through the page, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Drawing all these scales? Oh my God. But
this book, every issue, I read. Well, I'll do my initial read through, which is kind of the way I'll read and I'll enjoy the issue, kind of make a casual read through. I'll go through and do a separate read-through just to then focus on the dialogue. Then I'll do a third read-through just to take my time and look at the art. Honestly, the reason why I do that is because there's so much to see. And I've encouraged fans to do that a lot more on the show because of just a lot of what you're addressing here. I'm really growing to appreciate just the amount of extra little time and details, and I can't get all that in on my first read-through. I'm going back to a lot of what I did as a kid when I read comics, and I'm like, what is it, what I liked so much as a kid about it? It was a lot of fun as a kid a lot of times just to page through and enjoy the art. There were so many times where I did that after I'd read an issue, because we as kids, we had no budget. So we read comics where you would read it like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times, and then some. And there were times where I would just look through specific scenes and things like that. I'm doing this again as an adult. I encourage people to do that, because this issue, like even just paging through it right now, talking to you, like I'm looking at Gigantic getting wrapped up by this dragon creature and all that, and I'm just like, this is so cool. And that's, and seeing and complimenting too Jason Wright on the colors when you're looking at like some of the way the light sourcing works. I mean, this is a great example of a book. We did Raging Oscars our last 2 episodes ago. It's kind of our awards show.
Oh, okay.
And the only reason why I'm even referencing it right now, this book got my top creative team for the year. And the reason,
wow, thank you.
Yeah, and it's honestly both of us. I actually speak the same thing. And it was easy because of the fact that you guys all just seem to, there's a great energy here. You seem to mesh well together. Sequences like this, I'm like, the dialogue, the arts, the colors, everything, it just all just flows so beautifully. The epilogue sequence at the end where Dwarfstar finally got his. I mean, it's just such a great conclusion to an arc.
Jason definitely adds a lot to the book. He's the best, I think the best colorist I've had, just in terms of getting what I'm doing. My favorite page in the book was the one with Catman on the cat. That was my favorite one, especially since it was if you look up in the little corner of it, it says a little nod to Frazetta, because it's a Frazetta painting I used for that.
Oh, nice.
Well, I look at the painting. I drew out the layout, and I'm like, this is like the Berserker on the horse. I'm like, okay, I'll give a little nod to Frazetta up there in the corner.
That's sweet.
Especially since I had just found out he had died, I think, fairly recently. I didn't know he had died, and so I was like, Frazetta died. Oh, shit. So that was sort of a little sad little nod to him. But if you tell me you're paying attention to the little things, I have a question for you.
Okay.
The scene with Spymaster, is that her name?
Yes.
Was that her name? Yeah. And Waller in the park talking. What's happening in the background?
I'm going to go to the...
Oh. No.
I go by memory.
Oh, from memory? Oh, boy.
You have to look. There's a gag in the background. It's the same panel progression where they're across from each other.
You stumped us here, because I'm trying to remember. I remember the
Usually
scene.
one of us catches it, too.
I remember them.
Right. The issue opens with her on the boat scene.
Oh, there's a guy cleaning up poop in the background.
Yeah. His dog takes a crap and he walks off with the bag. That was all me. I threw that in.
Oh, that's funny.
It fits well.
I love that it's all going on in the middle of two of them having this deep discussion, too.
Yeah, I said to the editor, don't put any dialogue over that.
That's really funny.
I just wonder how many people picked up on it. A couple people did, but I don't know if it's just me just laughing by myself, basically.
Oh, God, no.
That's why I do, though. We've actually talked about that on the show. This is actually a great example of why, because that's happened before when we've had artists on where they pointed out things that sometimes we've caught and other times that we haven't. And that's a great example of where something, you need multiple read-throughs a lot of times, because there's those things that when you're doing your initial surface read-through, which we all do, you miss those little details. Because you guys really do, you talk about shortcuts and things like that, you mentioned it earlier. For all the little tricks you need to do to try and get this book out on time, which is I'm always intensely amazed at what you guys are able to do in a month, because the books are always gorgeous. It's one of the reasons why we do the podcast that we do. I'm a school teacher, so I do this for fun.
Oh, all right.
The podcast is therapeutic. Comics are therapeutic. So it's great to be able to do this and give a little love back to this medium. This is our end of our 5th year actually doing this. The reason why we do this is because of the work that you guys do as creators, taking month in, month out, your time to really push yourselves to try and get out. Like you said, sometimes, I put myself through murder to put these issues out. But, and to do these extra little things, like even that issue 26 we're talking about with the park scene, you got this 3-headed beast coming out of here with this great sequence fighting Catman, fighting him. These are all little things that when I go back through in my read-throughs, I'll look for little tiny details like how the knife reacts and stuff like that. Just little types of things that you put a little extra oomph into when you're doing the artwork that I particularly enjoy. So,
well, it makes it, we've got to make it fun for ourselves too.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we're not challenging ourselves, we're not challenging the reader either.
What brought you into comics?
I just always loved comics. You mean, how did I get in?
No, I mean, honestly, what was it that drew you into it? I mean, that was actually kind of my first thing. You've always just been a fan of comics, and that kind of brought you to it?
I always loved comics, and I wanted to be an artist. I was always wanting to be an artist. You're an artist or you aren't, as with any creative endeavor. Either you are or you aren't. And so I went to art school, and I always wanted to work in art, and I'd read comics since I was a little kid, and I loved them, and I like the medium. The graphic storytelling. It's always been something I really enjoyed. So, and I've done other work. I've done freelance advertising, illustration. I've done just about everything, but I like the medium.
Now that you're in the medium, this is what you do. Do you still get that same kind of appreciation and that same love of the comics just sitting down and reading it? Or because I can imagine it'd be tough. If you're doing this, you're like. We talk about it's hard for us on our side. We do this for fun. This isn't a job for us, but for you, this is your work.
Well, there's pluses and minuses. I mean, there are people in the industry who don't like comics and who don't read them. I mean, I read comics. I love comics. It's still a medium I enjoy immensely. But, there is that thing that anybody who's a working artist sort of comes up against where you generally don't have time to draw for yourself. You used to... in school or even before, you would sit and you'd say, you just have an idea to draw. Now you got bills and monthly deadlines, and so there is that aspect to it where it's your living. But on the other hand, even on my worst days, I've got it so much better than so many people. When I bitch about something, it's sort of hollow, or it should be ringing sort of hollow. It's like, somebody should be standing there saying, "You're drawing for a living, you schmuck. Shut up."
On your website, you have a section like the lost stories that kind of were possibly created that never came to be. And my various pitches. I tell you, I loved that the opposite universe where it was the female heroes.
Yeah.
Especially the way you laid out how the story goes through, how Superman was called Superboy, because how we have female superheroes now are called girls no matter what.
Right.
And I thought that was a neat little twist to it, because they're it's the same Kal-El, but this time he's called Superboy because. And then with John being he was still John, but when he came to a female world, he made himself a female. So
right.
It was, I thought just a lot of it and just the way that story laid out, I'm reading it going, man, I wish this was made. This sounds cool.
Yeah, I wish it was made too. Did I put the thing about peckers in there?
Yeah,
that's what I like, the gags.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously to try and write a good story, but I enjoyed the gags there, like the businesswomen went to Peckers, not Hooters.
Yes,
stuff like that.
And it was a nice, just completely shifting all around all of the universe, and even the ending. I'm not going to spoil. I don't want to spoil it because people can go out and actually read this and kind of enjoy it.
Well, it's not like it's a 12-issue miniseries.
Right?
With 2 paragraphs. You're not ruining anything.
John basically reveals that he is a man because we get this invasion kind of deal, and he does the whole double agent type of deal. And at the end, because he revealed he's a man, he's now a step down the social ladder, even though he's basically one of the key elements that saved this Earth.
Oh, that's funny. He becomes the oppressed because...
Yeah. I mean, it's not like they're in slave pits.
Right. No, I don't mean it that.
He becomes as unjustly, how women are paid less and all those things.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, I thought that was just a great way. Yeah, I'm like sitting there like, wow, this is a cool. Not only just on the initial opening, like, yeah, that's gonna be kind of neat. Then that you actually go into detail about the social classes and just the the social structure of this world. And I was like, this is the kind of stuff that makes Elseworlds really cool.
Oh yeah, that's the Elseworlds. Well, what ifs and Elseworlds were,
Yeah, those are fun stories.
I'm hoping we get more Elseworlds, because when I'm hearing that story, they just did Carrie Bates. They did Superman last.
You mean I get comps kind of late?
Okay.
So I'm months behind on things. You're not talking about Earth 1, are you?
No. There was actually one that was it was a 3-issue series that came out this past year, and it was actually Elseworlds, and it's the first Elseworlds I've seen in ages, and it was actually labeled Elseworlds. And it was three issues.
I missed that one altogether.
Oh, Superman Last Family of Krypton.
Yeah.
And the premise behind it, this won't ruin anything, it's the initial premise right from the get-go.
Oh, you're ruining everything for everybody.
Yeah.
No, we've talked about it on the show, so any of the listeners are like, but it's what if Jor-El and Lara lived and came with Kal-El to Earth?
Oh, okay.
And they did a 3-issue arc on it. But the reason why it's relevant to our discussion here, when you were just talking about that storyline, I'm like, I want to read that, because I love Elseworld stories where you get some satire on real social commentary, and that's what that whole bit with the Martian Manhunter, when you were saying that, I'm like, boy, I'd like to see that in print, because I'm like, that would be really funny, because I love laughing at the realities of the way our world is in comic art and in the medium. It's the fun thing about social satire.
Well, that's also what the best Elseworlds were, not commentary on society, but it's a way of commenting on the character.
Yeah.
By giving him whatever alternate reality and showing his situation, his personality, or even if it's a completely different person, it's commenting on the existing character, or at least it should, in some way, comment on the existing characters.
I'm hoping that Mini did relatively well, just because of the fact that I would like to see more Elseworlds. Because when you were mentioning Elseworlds before, I'm like, there was that long stretch there where there was a few Elseworlds being released every year. And
it was a going concern for them.
Yeah,
definitely. But unfortunately, I guess it didn't hit that big, because I completely lost on that one. I don't remember that one. I don't know if they're going to, but I think it would be a nice idea if they continued, not Superboy or Superman Earth 1, but just continued the idea of, okay, let's do other Earth 1's characters. And that could be a sort of Elseworlds.
When they announced the preview, they announced that there was going to be a Batman one.
They did? Okay.
Yeah, and
I
then
kind of assumed it seemed like it, but I didn't know for sure.
And then, I guess because of how well Earth 1 did, the Superman one, they're doing a sequel to that.
Well, I expected that.
Yeah.
But I also thought they should use it as a way. I guess it's actually more or less sort of a Ultimates line, which is Elseworlds in and of itself.
Sure.
At Marvel, to then do the other characters. And I'm assuming they're using big names. Who's doing the Batman?
Well, it's supposed to be, and I haven't heard anything recently about it. It's Jeff Johns is writing, and then the artwork is supposed to be, I thought it was Gary Frank.
Okay.
I think on the artwork. I'm almost positive, and I might be wrong on that one. They announced that one way back when they originally announced the Superman one, but I'm assuming just because of scheduling and how crazy things get, that one's taken a little longer to get out than the Superman one. Or they might have a time frame where they're like, let's release one here, and then, so, there might be a deliberate reason, too, why that one's... I wish that number of them talking about it now, that actually makes a lot more sense. There's probably a deliberate spacing between them to give people a chance to digest the one, and then let's release another one because they're those hardcovers. So,
Right. Yeah, I also don't know when it would have been announced in terms of also all the juggling that's gone on lately editorially and people moving around and moving across the country and all that stuff.
Before Jeff Johns moved into his new role was when they had announced that book, I'm almost positive, so I'm wondering if that might have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, his time may just be more compressed, still doing Green Lantern and all that.
Jim, is there anything in particular you'd like to shout out or anything? I want to make sure, is there anything you wanted to talk about real quick before, because I know we've taken a lot of your time, and I was just looking at the clock.
It's okay, I've been working the whole time. I'm sitting here inking. Well, that's why I wanted to use the phone that I could put under my shoulder.
Yeah.
See, that
I'm
just
working on
amazing.
issue 31 as we speak.
Oh, I'm Jealous.
That just amazes me that you can sit there and you're doing that, because we've talked to creators before, and they'll do, periodically, oh yeah, I'm working on this. Like, how can you do the two things like that at once? And it's not even like you're doing good artwork, and I couldn't do bad artwork and do it at the same time when I'm talking.
Well, it's not like I'm penciling. It's not like I'm creating the page from scratch. That there'd probably be these long pauses where you're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, thinking. I'm inking, so everything's on the page. So I'm pretty much just adding the line weights and the blacks and all that. So it's not that difficult. But it's anything, it's like anything. It's like driving a car. You can do a lot of stuff while you're driving a car. We've been doing this for years. I work on trains. I work on cars. I work everywhere. Sometimes you have to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, cool. Yeah, because you
going to the Pittsburgh Comic-Con one year, I was working in the back seat of the car while somebody else was driving, just to make my deadline.
Well, that's a question I have for you. How do you pace yourself I'm assuming over the years you've probably become pretty good at saying, I've got to get this much in a certain amount of time, or I've got to do that. How do you pace yourself from issue to issue? And I would imagine one of the big issues is, too, where do double-page spreads go? Where does this go, that go? How do you keep yourself on time? How do you do it?
I do it because I have to. I mean, that might sound slightly glib, but it's just what it is. It's also dependent often on when I get script or them changing deadlines on me. When I was doing Gotham Underground, one of the issues, basically the next issue in scheduling, I didn't know that it wasn't a sudden move on their part, but it was something of surprise that they moved it up 2 weeks for the next issue. In other words,
gosh.
If the one issue came out at the end of the month, the next issue was coming out the second week of the next month. So then our pace was really shot. And I actually had to pencil 2 issues in a month to keep everything online. But I did it. Did it because I had to. Anybody can draw a book on time. It's the other things that seem to screw people up. It's really just work ethic. Anybody can draw a book a month. Anybody can get it done.
Question, with like a Gotham Underground and with Aquaman and with Secret Six, there's actually one question. As an artist, when you come new on a book, how do you, I'm assuming you're going to hit characters from time to time where like you haven't drawn them before.
Right.
How do you...
Gotham Underground was all that.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, there was like everybody who's anybody, and the smaller characters, big characters in the Batman villain line, really.
Plus, I had just come over pretty much from Marvel after doing Exiles for years, so I had no idea who anybody was. Well, I know who Penguin and Two-Face is, but I needed reference on almost every single character. Sorry, I interrupted your thought.
No, actually, you're going right in the direction that I was heading with that. I was going to say, how do you get to know the characters then? And you obviously, what you can call DC, they give you reference. Is that what happens on your end then?
Right. When I get a script, I go through the script, and if I need any reference, I let the editor know I need this, and this. Sometimes I get the character very easily. I really liked the way I did Penguin, the way I drew Penguin, and I got him immediately. On the other hand, when I did the first couple issues of Countdown, I could not get Jimmy Olsen for anything. He was just a character I could not get a handle on, and if you look at the issues he was in, he looks different in every panel. Sometimes you get a character right away, and they're no problem drawing it, and then sometimes it's just a struggle and a half.
One of the things, actually, I want to compliment Gotham Underground. I loved the covers. I love the interiors, too, but I mean, the covers in that book in particular, that was something that I was like, wow, that was really cool.
That was fun. Well, I had done, Mike Martz, the editor, had been the editor on Exiles. And I had done some connected covers in Exiles. I did a 3-issue connected cover and then a bunch of double-issue connected covers. And when he asked me to do Gotham Underground, he asked me if I'd like to do connected covers on there. And I'm like, sure. The funny thing about that was that it was supposed to be an 8-issue series. And we did the 9-cover layout with the theory that one of the covers would be alternate cover.
Oh, okay, like the retailer incentives, that type of things?
Yeah, it would have been, whatever issue, the last issue or the first issue would have had 2 covers.
Okay.
And lower right corner with Jim Gordon and the wanted posters was intended as the alternate cover. And when he showed it to whomever, they said, well, let's make it 9 issues. I was like, okay, good. So we had extra room. But that's probably one of my favorite pieces of all time just because of what it is, how it worked out. and how much effort went into it. I mean, that was a lot of work for that.
When it was finished, I actually laid out all the covers on the floor because I'm like, oh, I want to see this. Because you had brought, I remember when the series was first announced, you were at a convention.
Right.
You were in the DC Nation panel, or it was one of the panels that were there, and they said that you have preview pages for it over at your table.
I had the the actual size of the original art is 50 inches by 30 inches.
Mm-hmm.
It's 9 full-size boards. So what I did was make a Xeroxes of all the original art full size and had it all taped together on a easel behind my table, and that's what was at my table.
And I came over and saw that, and I was like, whoa, which was really awesome. And it was one of the cool things at that convention because it was a bonus, because that was my first hearing about the miniseries, and then to come over and see that, and I was like, "What? That's a great way to promote a miniseries." Yeah,
I should have brought it to the panel. I thought, like, after the panel, I was like, "Damn, I should have brought it." My best moment with that was, and now I'm going to name drop for this one, just because it was cool. Steve Rude, who I had never met and didn't know it was him standing in front of the booth looking at it because he'd walked by in San Diego, just said, "That is spectacular," and that's my good moment.
Cool.
To have Rude come over and say that, because he's such a, I love Nexus and his artwork.
Absolutely. Actually, one other thing that you mentioned earlier, the series you did with Judd Winnick, Exiles, I was a huge fan of that. Going along with the whole Elseworlds discussion before, that was like a Marvel, quote-unquote, Elseworldsy thing where you got, it was more of an X-Men time travel, but it did actually incorporate the whole Marvel universe from time to time, where you would see different variations depending on what planet they landed on of other Marvel heroes.
Right.
And what a fun series that was.
Yeah. I mean, we could do whatever we wanted and have whoever we wanted in it instead of knocking on the editor's door for Captain America and saying, "Can we use Captain America this month?" We could have anybody we wanted in this series because it wasn't them. And we could design them any way we wanted to. We had a lot of fun with that, for sure. I think I did like 5 different versions of Hawkeye.
One of the cool things I loved about it was you'd get one month like a almost exact version, where it was like what you'd call the classic quote unquote version of the character. But then like the next month you'd get like this real wacky version of it that was, it's clear it's still that character, but because we're on a different planet now, they might be a little twisted, or that they're a little bit more this way. And I loved that. Was another great example of a series where you didn't know what you were going to get next.
Yeah. Well, if you saw the characters looking like they sort of look normally, that was me doing it intentionally, because sometimes Judd would say, "Okay, this character looks like this, or this character looks like this," or sometimes he would just say the names of the characters, and I got to do whatever I wanted. And sometimes I wanted to draw Captain America, so it was my way of getting to draw the character, but we could say it wasn't really the character. One of my favorites was a complete mistake. I read the script. The script said Iron Fist, or an Iron Fist. And I thought it said Power Fist. I have no idea how I read that in my head. And I thought, that's a cool idea, Luke Cage and the Iron Fist together. So I drew it, and then I went back to the script, and it never said that. And that was one of my favorite designs, just in terms of the theory of the character.
That's awesome.
But I was like, "Hey, Judd, I screwed this up." He goes, "Don't worry about it."
Well, that's one of the fun things.
Character.
Yeah. That's probably a fun thing about a book like that, is you can take a look at that and say, well, wait, a happy accident turns into something that actually winds up working.
Yeah.
One question I've got about when you were talking about going from DC to Marvel and then Marvel to DC, is it hard as an artist when you're shifting from 2 major universes like that, as far as, are you still like in quote-unquote DC mode or still in Marvel mode when you switch from one way or another? How does that work for you?
Well, I mean, you listed how many things you've seen me on. I've been bouncing around so much through the years. Yeah. It feels like I shift all the time, even inside a universe. So I guess it's something I've become used to. But it's really just comes down to a matter of needing reference. I guess the bouncing has got me used to it. And it's just, okay, I need the reference on this, I need the reference on this. I mean, there are some things, probably why I went so crazy on Catman, is that Marvel has sort of a thing about no blood when I was on Exiles. So anytime I drew blood, they colored it gray because they didn't want blood.
Oh, yeah, and in 6 to me, you gotta have that.
You gotta have some blood.
Well, yeah, it was just, I mean, that was I don't know if they still do it. That was the period when they were like, no cigars for Ross or Wolverine. So they like weren't smoking at all.
Yeah, because actually my first exposure to Wolverine, he always had a big stogie in his mouth.
Yeah, well, Thunderbolt Ross needs a cigar in his mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, pretty damn sure what it represents for him, but definitely part of his character.
Absolutely.
So, but it's yeah, there's some. It's once in a while you've got editorial concerns that have to be paid attention to, but other than that, it's just give me the reference, let me draw.
You know, I was a big Doctor Who fan. I loved the first. There was like 2 issues of it. Faction Paradox.
Faction Paradox. Wow.
That was super cool, and I was a huge fan of that, and it was a Doctor Who universe way of kind of telling Doctor Who-ish stories without having to worry about like some of the licensing and stuff. I remember it came out; it was an audio, I think, first, and then it became a comic, or it was a book first.
I found out doing that project that England has a very interesting copyright law.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, say here, if I got hired to write a Star Wars novel,
mm-hmm.
any characters I created for that novel would be considered work for hire and would be property of Lucasfilm. Same thing with any characters I created for any comic book. You know, like Nocturne is not my character. I created her, but she's not my character. It's Marvel's character. In England, apparently, when you're working on, like, Doctor Who, any characters you create new, you own the copyright on them.
Wow.
So that Faction Paradox is from all the... I wasn't that familiar with what he did of the Doctor Who novels, but those characters he started from the Faction Paradox universe, he basically had the copyright to. And that's how we were doing a comic, just based on that batch of characters.
It may have been in novels that those came out first.
He did novels. I know what we did in the book wasn't an adaptation of a novel, though. It was all a new story.
No, it wasn't. It 100% wasn't, because I know it. The reason why I was mentioning audios, Faction Paradox appeared, I know, in book form in Doctor Who stories. It also was, I think it was a company called BBV over in England that made, they were audio plays, which were not adaptations of the novels. They were original stories of the Faction Paradox. And then when the comic came out, I'm like, wow, this is a cool thing that's kind of taken off and going all the directions. I was so sad when it only went like 2 issues, because I was really digging it.
It was not supporting itself, so the publisher pulled the plug, sorry. No,
well, you know what, the only reason why I threw it out, I'm like, it was 2 issues that I really enjoyed, and I thought it was worth mentioning because I'm like, well, I'm one of the people that was enjoying it, and I'm like, Yeah,
I get them once in a while at shows still. We also did an encyclopedia for the Faction Paradox universe. Same publisher.
Wow.
That's what actually came first, was him having me do, because he does the publisher, Mad Norwegian Press.
Yeah.
Does unauthorized guides, and I've done some covers for their Doctor Who's. I've done covers for their... I did interior for their Transformers. I did a cover for their Farscape. And he wanted to do an encyclopedia that basically outlined all the characters in Faction Paradox. Because he was planning... I think he published a novel, even. Faction Paradox novel beside the comic. And so I did a bunch of drawings for the encyclopedia of characters, and then he basically had the idea that he wanted to do a comic book.
It was crazy with some of that Doctor Who stuff, because I did not get the encyclopedia, so that's one I'll have to try to seek out on like eBay and stuff like that. But so I did not know that. I'm glad you mentioned it, because that's something I didn't know that was even out there. Some of the stuff from England, especially in that era, it was, unless you happened, this fan site that you happened to go to that was sell stuff had it, it was hard to find some of it.
Really?
Yeah, because it wasn't like, Doctor Who's had this resurgence now, so it's pretty easy to find Doctor Who stuff in your bookstore chains and some comic shops, things like that. There's a lot more ability to find this stuff. Back then, I had a couple of shops that had Doctor Who material, because I was a big fan of the novels, because the novels had a continuing continuity, which is how I got into it.
How long had it been since they've been on the stands? I mean, it's a while, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, not in the stands, on TV. I mean, for years after... I'm not a Who aficionado. I know there was Tom Baker, and then there was the blonde guy, and that was gone for a long time, right?
There was actually two guys afterwards, and part of the reason, actually, you hit the nail on the head, part of the reason why it was off for so long is after Tom Baker and then Peter Davison, there was two other guys, and it was slowly waning with the two other guys. And then it went into novel form. Virgin picked up the novel rights, and they created their own continuity that continued afterwards. It got a little bit more adult, which is how the Faction Paradox eventually came into it.
So do you like the new series?
Oh, I love it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the new series. It's kind of matured it in a way that it would logically should, because the fan base is older. But then at the same time, it's got something good for everybody. I think it goes back to the core of what was cool about. You mentioned Tom Baker. I put it up there with that stuff, but it's a lot more today. It's not rubber suits anymore and stuff like that. I mean,
I really enjoyed the show too.
Yeah.
I actually liked Eccleston best.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning, I wish he had stayed on. Tennant was okay. I didn't take to him as well. I like the new guy more than I thought I would.
Eccleston, it was meant to be. He was only meant to do one season. That was always in the plan. That's why they didn't start with a regeneration. I guess I read in one of the articles. They didn't start with him changing into that character because they knew they were going to do it at the end of the season. Wow, that was I remember when that kicked off right out of the starting gate. I was like, "Ooh, he's like perfect."
Yeah, I liked him a lot on there. I think the last season with Donna Noble was sort of running a little. It's good they got the new blood in there. I think writing wise after with Smith now. So I felt the last season with Tennant was a little uninspired to me. The ending was great for his run, but a lot of
the last four movies that they did with him.
Well, the way they ended him.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the four movies. I didn't like the one in the desert. I think in the bus in the desert.
And I think they went to the movie. Well, I know they went to the movie format because he was doing Hamlet, and it was kind of a way to keep him on while they were trying to make a decision as far as who was going to come on next.
Yeah.
They're breaking up the series this time into two mini-series. Like, they're doing 7 episodes and 7 episodes, I think, this time.
Are they?
Because I guess they're planning, like, it's going to be one big arc like they've been doing, but they're planning, like, a mid-season cliffhanger.
So are we, like, boring the hell out of your partner there right now?
Oh, God, no.
Oh, okay.
I'm just not a big Doctor Who fan, so...
That's what I mean. No, You're not a Doctor Who fan, so we're, like, boring the hell out of you.
I'm a fan of it, but I really don't know knowledge. I have known, so I'm just like, for me, I would just throw in a little, clip like, oh yeah, the one guy, you know which one I like, Sean. What's his name? That would be kind of, I don't know the actors' names or any stuff like that, but I do, Sean's gotten me into Doctor Who and, the Torchwood and the various other, British TV shows. So,
well, I like Being Human a lot, so.
Yes.
I'm waiting to see how badly sci-fi screws that up.
The adaptations of British television to when they do like the American versions, in most cases, I think The Office is an exception where it worked out really well. There's usually it's just they don't get it. That's
why I'm sort of dreading what they're going to do to it. We'll see. But let me ask you one Doctor Who question, and we can get off Doctor Who.
Sure.
Which I never really asked anybody because I never really knew many Doctor Who fans or aficionados who know a lot. The Time War, was that something that they made up just for the beginning of the new series?
Yes.
Okay.
That was
never a thing. The series ended. The last series had a Gallifrey around, and when you came back, there was no Gallifrey.
Yes.
Because of the quote-unquote Time War that's never been shown, just referenced.
The books, actually, all the novels that were being published in between, because the novels, like I said, they had a continuity, and even BBC took back the novels from Virgin afterwards, and because there was a TV movie for Doctor Who that aired. Oh, it was with Paul McGann. It was a single TV movie. It was an American British kind of combo effort, which I enjoyed, but it was a one-shot movie, and it never led into a series. It was supposed to.
Okay.
It introduced the 8th Doctor, the one right before Eccleston.
Okay.
They launched that into novels then because it never took off. There was Gallifrey there during that whole time.
Well, but the novels didn't have the Time War.
Exactly.
So it was just a creation for the new series. In other words, that storyline that there had been a Time War and Gallifrey was gone and all that.
I think they were trying to simplify his story for new viewers, I guess.
Well, it also gave it good character drive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good idea. I just didn't know if in some bad series I never watched they had actually done that.
We actually cast our own on one episode, Muppet Secret 6.
Muppet Secret 6?
Yes.
So Animal was Ragdoll.
I don't even remember who we did. Because we were... Well, here's where it got really twisted. Because we started having arguments over which character was going to be. And I kept saying that we have to have Zoot in it, not because he fit necessarily any character, but because he's Zoot. Yes, yeah. You got to Zoot. You got to have Zoot in there.
Which one is Zoot?
I don't think we ever... Did I ever
Is that the sax player with the mustache?
Yes.
Oh, he can't be any character.
Well, that's just it. So the debate was, and I kept throwing in there, I kept saying, but I need Zoot in there. He can't be any of them because he doesn't really fit.
He could be the stuffed dead parademon on Ragdoll's bed.
There, we've got our Zoot.
We've got Zoot now.
I know I could be of service in here.
You've now cast our Zoot.
Yeah.
I don't remember who anybody else was. Didn't we make Kermit somebody? I don't know who would Kermit.
Scandal. Kermit should be Scandal. Miss Piggy is Jeanette.
Yeah.
Animal has to be Ragdoll.
I knew we had him as somebody. Was it Ragdoll?
I think we had him as Ragdoll, but we were like, granted, Animal doesn't have the vocabulary that Ragdoll does, but he had the right style for him. And we had...
I thought we put Animal as Bane.
Right?
Oh, no, Bane was the big hairy guy.
Yeah.
The one who would always come...
Not named Jack Job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Deadshot, didn't you have Skeeter?
Oh, God, please.
No. I don't remember who I had. I'll be honest with you.
It's been so long.
Did you do this on a show?
Yes.
Well, oh, yeah. It was a passing comment where...
that turned into 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, I had, we do notes at the start of the show, typically, of things that we want to discuss. So there was something in the issue that made me... I don't know why. I said, oh, it'd be funny if, we did Muppet Secret 6, and it was this character. It was something in the issue that just sparked me, and I said that. It was intended to be like a 2-second comment. It turned into a 20-minute discussion where we cast Muppet Secret 6, because we started arguing over it.
20-minute fight.
Over which character? Not like
well, that's one of those idiotic arguments where it's like, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Absolutely.
You're casting Muppets as comic book characters, villains.
The whole point of that was, though, there actually was a point to the whole thing. This book that you guys are crafting every month is very important to us, so I really want to thank you for your time coming on the show. It was a pleasure to meet you in New York. And I really want to thank you for your willingness to give up some of your time to come on and chat with us about it, because it's a book that we're constantly telling our listeners, and I know a lot of our listeners have sent us an email saying how much they're enjoying the book as well. I just think I think it's one of the best books DC's publishing right now,
Thank you.
And thank you for the entertainment you provide every month.
Sure, no problem. I'm here to serve. The one thing I'd actually like to get a little mention in about the website.
Sure.
Because I'm in the process of a slight overhaul of the website. We're going to be changing some pages on the website, jimcalafiore.com. And I'm starting up a couple new features. One is a weekly little strip that's just a single strip format, gags, weird stuff. And the other is I'm starting a webcomic on my website, a superhero webcomic, that I'm going to have the first piece of little promo art up when hopefully this overhaul will be done by the end of the month, if not into February sometime. And
we'll actually have links to that directly in the show notes and on the website, so people can, who are listening right now on their iPods, can just click right on it from the show notes or the website. So
that's cool.
Is there anything else that you want to shout out real quick, or?
I'm in sports hell at the moment, but that's my own problem. The Giants didn't make the playoffs. The Devils suck. The Nets suck. And the Mets aren't doing anything to fix their team, so I'm in hell.
Dude, we live in Cleveland.
Yeah, I know. I always feel funny complaining about sports here. This area, the number of championships and finals we've had, just even with my teams, the Nets were in 2 finals, the Giants, the Devils, one of the premier teams in the league for so many years,
We'll take your cast-offs.
Huh? Yeah, I know. And there's places where you have nobody's had a championship in any sport for so long, or even a whiff of it. And I'm like, too bad.
Yeah. 1948 was our last championship.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, what do you got? You got the Indians. You got the Browns.
The Cavs.
Oh God, that's right. You lost LeBron.
yeah.
That's okay. He was pretty much a dick about the whole thing anyway.
Oh, the decision, yes.
Yeah, I mean, having a show on ESPN for a half frickin' hour. What's hockey?
Well, we got minor league, the Monsters.
You don't have
we don't have an
NHL team. Okay.
Yeah. Closest NHL we have is Columbus Blue Jackets.
You got a new coach for the Browns.
Yes, yeah. That was today they announced that.
I can't remember who, but you got somebody.
The Rams former offensive coordinator.
Right, there you go. Well, hiring Mangini was just a dumb idea.
Yeah.
That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
I watch people hire cast-offs for head coaches, and I'm like, are you insane? But you don't have too much sympathy from me.
You sit there and you just deal with the pain every year, and you look for those moments of joy that you can have, like, hey, remember that one run that or you remember that pass? Oh yeah, that was a great pass, and
put that on a loop on your TV just so you can enjoy that.
Remember that one run?
Hey, some of the Hillis runs got me through the season. And I compare being a Browns fan to being in an abusive relationship.
Remember when he caught the ball?
Yeah.
I DVR Super Bowl 42 every year when they run it on NFL Network, just so I can watch it again.
Yeah, that was a great game.
Oh yeah, I mean I can live off. I lived off that for a few years. Our biggest problem was Plaxico Burr shooting himself in the leg.
I love it. He's DVRing the Super Bowl because his team's like, we've been there. In our case, remember when he caught the ball?
There's no sympathy in sports.
No, there really isn't. There really isn't.
The only sympathy is from another. I mean, you get sympathy probably from Detroit fans.
Yeah.
Or actually, you can look down on Detroit fans.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No, they beat us.
This year?
Yeah, they soundly beat us.
But you beat the Patriots.
Yeah, no idea how that happened.
Yeah, but you did.
Yeah.
So you take that. It was a weird year. The Giants demolish Green Bay and then lose to somebody bad. It's been that kind of year where everybody's beaten everybody. And somebody came, Patriots came on strong at the end, but it just seems like everybody was beating everybody. Somebody's the best team in the league for a week, and then next week they lose to the Rams, or something like that. It's a very strange season.
It was funny, before we did the interview with you just now, we recorded this week's show. I edit those less because it's just the two of us, and I tend to feel more of a responsibility when a creator's giving up their time to come on the show. But
okay.
When we did the intro to the show, I said, we've got the artist for Secret Six next week. Now, you got to understand, in the meantime, I know I've butchered your name probably like 700 times on the show previously. Okay. But, I'm very conscious of the fact that, you're on the next episode, that I was going to be asking you the question as far as how do we pronounce your last name. So then
at the end, website and looked at that answer?
Well, at the end of the show, he had mentioned it on there. That I think it said something about California and then Fury afterwards. So then I'm like, okay. So at the end, I'm like, you hear me kind of tentatively go.
Taking a shot at it?
Yeah. I said the Secret Six artist, Jim Calafiore. Again, I've always added this extra Jim Califiore, which is what honestly, that's how I've been pronouncing it on the other one.
The I hard?
Yeah, I've hit the I hard probably every single time I've mentioned and I've mentioned your name a lot because we talk about the book a lot. So
that's still pretty close, though. I mean, that's better than most.
Yeah.
You're just hitting the I hard. You're still in the neighborhood of the name.
Right, but I was, I was doing that, but it was funny how different it was this time because I hit the I hard because I was very confident that, hey, I got it, I nailed it, hit the home run on it.
Until you found out.
Yeah.
It's all right. I am used to it. People misspelling my name is the worst part. They misspelled my name on one of the on the Western issue.
Oh,
on the cover.
I think I saw that when they did the Western when it came out too. I said, what did they leave out? The I or something?
They make the second A and I like spelling California.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like California. So it was okay. I just said don't let it happen again. I wasn't that
it's right here.
off
Yeah.
by it. But when people bring it for me to sign, I cross out the I and I put an A.
I see it right here. I've got the issue in front of me. This is really, really great, and it was a pleasure to meet you in New York.
Thank you for supporting the book.
No, it's one of our favorites, so we will be continuing to do so.
Holy caffeine!
I want to remind everyone about our show contest. It ends January 31st. It's the Sensei Super Snuggie Caption Contest. And if you look over at RagingBullets.com, right up at the top of the page, I pinned up a message telling everyone the details of the contest. Jim got a Superman Snuggie for Christmas, and his sister sent me some really funny pictures of it, so I thought it'd be fun as a contest to have listeners send in their captions. We have a ton of entries. I'm actually going to make up a separate page for it that will just kind of stay permanently on the site so people can see it beyond the contest, which is why I haven't put up any more of the entries since then. There's still time to, it's midnight, January 31st, any time zone is the deadline. Send us in your favorite captions. What do you think Jim's saying? If you want to send it in as a comic strip where you're taking all 3 pictures and making a little story out of it, that's great. If you want to do up single captions, that's great. We're going to have 3 prize winners. The grand prize winner, the one that we find the most entertaining, is going to earn a trade of their choice at InStockTrades.com, and also they can join us for 2 show segments talking about 2 single comics of their choice. It'd be great to have a listener on to kind of talk about 2 of their favorite books and why those books wind up in their stack every month, so I'm really excited about that. We're going to also have 2 runners-up. We are fortunate enough that a lot of listeners, and I've also pulled from my own collection, sets of comics and also trade paperbacks that people can get as consolation prizes from these wonderful contests. So I'm going to have a first and second runner-up that we are going to pick for that as well. So it's a great chance for us to thank you for listening to the show, and a kind of a fun little contest. I actually have also another contest that's going to be planned following that for our 5th anniversary. It's going to be 5 years of Raging Bullets, March 23rd. And we're actually going to be at the C2E2 convention. There's going to be representation from the show there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the C2E2 convention. That's C2E2.com. That's going to be right towards the end of March. It's actually the weekend before the 23rd. So we're going to be celebrating our anniversary right at that convention. So we're really excited for that. And thank you for everyone out there for listening for the last 5 years to Raging Bullets. I want to thank everyone for their patience on this week's episode. This is my birthday week, actually. I just turned 40, and I want to thank everyone for some great birthday wishes. But on top of that, I'm also heading into my report card week for my job, which is makes for a really hectic couple of weeks. So that's why I made this episode a little bit shorter. I got the interview out because I really wanted to spend time editing this together and hopefully making an enjoyable experience for you. And then I'm working now on the Freddie E. Williams II interview, which we did this week, which I'm hoping to have out in less than a week to you guys so you can enjoy that. We'll definitely have 4 episodes in January. Hopefully more. I'm hoping we can get to another comic book related one where we can talk straight comics as well after the Freddie E. Williams II episode. So that's my current plan. If not, that'll be the first episode in February. I want to thank both creators, though, for joining us this month. It was really great, and I want to thank you as the listeners for supporting the show and just all the kind words this week for people who I've either talked to online, fellow podcasters. It's just been really just a fantastic, and creators. I have a couple creator friends who were kind enough to shout out happy birthday to me as well. So just thank you. It means a lot. I'm kind of overwhelmed at just how many nice, kind people that I've been lucky enough to meet in the 5 years we've been doing this podcast. And it's something that, it shows that there's a community in comics, which is something that for me is exactly what this is all about. So my opportunities to meet people at conventions and things like that is, I think, the experience at a convention. And I don't know if it was always this way, but I've been very fortunate that my view of going to a convention is really you're getting together with a community of people who really just support an art form that we all really important to us. So I'm really excited for 2011 and some of the great things that are going to be coming on this year, and I hope all of you are as well. Our sponsors this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. We're supporting a great book in Secret Six. It's regularly $2.99, 40% off only $1.79. That's issue 31, which kicks off a brand new arc. So if you haven't been reading this book, hopefully this episode will get you out there and picking this one up. And a new arc is a great time to jump on at that price point of $1.79 for the issue to see if it's a book for you. And if you want to pick up a trade, over at InStockTrades.com, they have the Secret Six trades. I picked up Secret Six Dance Macabre, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but this cool trade collects issues 15 to 18 and Suicide Squad number 67, and this is the beginning of Jim Califiore's run on this great book. So this is a show favorite. You've heard us talk about this book a lot, and if you haven't been picking it up, this episode hopefully will give you kind of a reason why you should start checking it out. And certainly look back at past episodes where we've been talking about this book cover to cover. This is a book you've got to pick up. And we will see everyone in hopefully a few days.
Bye!
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see.